Hello everyone and welcome to Arctic 15 Helsinki. My name is Henna Keränen and I'm happy to be hosting this very exciting and important topic today. We're going to discuss about diversity. We all know that it's still a huge issue, unfortunately, within the tech community, that it's not that diverse and inclusive that we all wish that it would be. But I'm very positive towards the future since we have so many good people working towards a more diverse tech community like the panelists that we have here today. We have several other exciting topics, so stay tuned and follow the different discussions. But now and here we are discussing about diversity. So with me today I have Annika Sjöberg from NGB Capital. I have Sofia Dolfe from Index Ventures, Henna from Oriflame, and Katja Toropainen from Inklusiiv. And you all listeners probably are wondering there who these brilliant people are, how they are working with diversity, and what is their advice to these important topics. So let's start with a short round of introduction with you, Annika.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Annika Sjöberg. I work with ESG and communications and sustainability at NGB Capital, which is a global venture capital firm with offices here in Helsinki, but also in Palo Alto and Geneva and Beijing and Shanghai. So we invest in early growth stage and in enterprise software and mobility. So I think we are a pretty rare VC in the sense that 40% of our senior partnership is women, 60% is men. So we've been actively working on improving that ratio and are still working on improving that ratio in the investment team. So we're quite active globally. I mean, we essentially work on 3 different levels. So we worked on our own organization, but then also portfolio level, and then also sort of industrial level. So trying to, partake in an open conversation about diversity and just drive awareness around this issue. So,
very good. Henrik, let's continue with you.
All righty, good to be here. So we've been working with diversity for a long time at Oriflame. So we're in the cosmetics industry and the direct sales industry. We work in, we have business in more than 60 countries around the world. It's a pretty big company, 1.3 billion USD in revenue. And I would say, like from start, diversity and gender equality has been a very important part of our business, and I think for us it starts all with, basically if you want to change something, you have to go down to the nitty-gritty things, So when we start, look after talent, we really believe in diversity, and it doesn't matter, are we talking about culture or gender or religion or race or, I think the starting point for us is really to be all diverse. And personally, I worked across the world in many different locations. I used to live in Asia. I've been in Finland now for approximately 5 years, and I've worked quite a lot in this space, and I have some thoughts today here for you guys. So it's happy to be here.
Looking forward to hear more. Katja.
Hi everyone, my name is Katja Toropainen. I'm the founder of Inklusiiv, a non-profit with a mission to make diversity, equity and inclusion knowledge available to all, and also support companies and organizations to transform it into action. Inklusiiv was founded in 2019, so we're still a young organization, but been growing. We have now 7 full-time team members. And essentially what we do is we have a supporting membership community of companies and organizations and events and knowledge sharing and things for them. Then overall we share knowledge very openly, participate in different things, and then also do trainings and consulting and really support companies and organizations that need help and really want to drive actionable change. And in addition to this, I'm also angel investing as part of Atomico's angel program. And really how I came to work with the diversity topics was that before Inklusiiv, I was in the leadership team of the startup event Slush and had a privilege to follow the global discussion around the startup and tech industry, and was spending time in places like London and San Francisco, and noticed and figured out that this is a really important topic, and there's already plenty of knowledge and research and best practices that we can actually take into action right away, which is great.
I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts that what should we do right away, but more about those later. So Sofia, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm part of the investment team at Index Ventures. It's a global venture capital firm that has been around for over 25 years now, and we're dually headquartered between London and San Francisco, investing at the seed, the venture plus up to growth pre-IPO stage. So very much a multi-stage firm. I've been with the firm for near 3.5 years now, working with founders in the Nordic region, but also across Europe more broadly. And regarding the current topic of diversity, it's something that we take very seriously and try to lead by example, not only on our investment team. I think in London we're actually majority women now, and also just in terms of the founders that we try to work with, and also how we think about board construct when working with teams. So happy to dive deeper into any of those topics and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think we will go directly to the conversation, since we don't have that much of time. And just to make sure for all of you who are watching this, that since we only have like 20 minutes, we will be focusing on gender diversity and mainly speak about that. We know that there are plenty of aspects to tackle and to discuss about, but that is, the main topic that we are here discussing today about. But I would like to start with you, Annika and Sofia, since you both work in a VC company, and we all have seen this miserable fact that it's only like a tiny minority of the investments that ends up to female-founded companies, unfortunately, and if you compare it to that, male-founded companies, so it doesn't look that promising. Why do you think this is so, and in your opinion, like, what should be done to fix this number and close the gender gap there? Any of you? Sofia, let's start with you.
I think one of the historic reasons is, venture capital has been a very male-dominated industry, and we've also seen historically fewer women part of the investment team making investment decisions and leading investments and sitting on boards on behalf of those firms, which may have some impact on the output, being that there's also been fewer female-founded companies receiving funding. I do think now it's interesting because we've seen a real shift also on the investor side, in that more women are active on the investment team. Across all levels of seniority, Index, we have female partners, and as a result, I do think also we'll be starting to see a trickle-down effect, in that we're starting to see more and more companies that are founded by women also receiving investment. So the trend, I would say, is it needs to come also from the investor side, which I think started to see a shift. So optimistic for what that will have as a hopefully good consequence for the investment side.
Yeah, so the investors being kind of like role models to the tech community in general, and showcasing that this is also, that there is a room for women as well, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, role models, but then also just because people tend to sort of invest in demographically similar people, this will lead, I think, to more funding for women. But I think the question about like why is a very difficult one, because part of the reason is definitely what Sofia just said, that it's historically so male-dominated and their networks remain really homogeneous, and the rules and patterns of actions and practices created in this environment are still very much linked to the male gender. So that's like an industrial barrier that women that fundraise are facing every time. But then there's also these organizational barriers, and I think many VCs have a lot of work to do on their organizational level, just in terms of HR practices and formalizing procedures and and assigning accountability for diversity and inclusion. But then there's also like a third, which is interpersonal barriers and investor cognition, and how biases affect decision making and so forth. So, but then so what can we do? I think there is a lot we can do that Sofia also just talked about. So working on your own organization, creating role models, being aware of your biases and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's also very important because we all have those, and we tend to, as you mentioned, to invest or know what or what, so we tend to favor those who are familiar with ourselves.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting discussion, because I think this thing is of course a much bigger thing. The reasons why we have so few startup ladies out there in a way, but the ones that we have, there's a lot of very successful stories, and then when we talk about it from a little bit of a not maybe a gender equality but a diversity perspective, one of the most important things I've learned, when it comes to diversity, gender diversity or diversity in general, is that when you have different types of people with different mindsets, with different skills and talents, and all that stuff, it actually helps innovation, and driving innovation in startups is of course crucial. It's very, very crucial to find out like new innovative ways of doing things. So I think one of the key discussions that we should try to lift is how do we create success through these types of mashing people and cultures and genders together. I think because that's something that has been studied a lot lately, and it's always the same result, that the more diverse the better, basically, when we talk about innovation.
And if we only look like profits, they actually perform better and gain more revenue as well. So in that sense, it would be in investors' interest as well to find those kind of companies. But what about you, Katja? I think, and we all know that you have been coaching like several companies within this topic. What is your intake, and how would you say to this discussion?
Yeah, I think Sofia mentioned nicely how it's like it has been something that has been building for decades. So we have this diversity depth that has been kind of building for decades and decades, when the tech industry and venture capital industry have been evolving. So when we look at the things from the point of view of data and point of view of more like structures, then it's easier to understand that actually this culture and this lack of diversity, it's ingrained in the structures of the industry. So there's like a massive amount of change and actions needed to do to change this for the better. And also Annika mentioned many of the barriers. There's like a ton of different barriers, whether it's the biases or sexism, racism, lack of representation, and a lot of different things. So there's a lot of different barriers that can also be kind of identified and then tackled. But I would say that we're still largely kind of building awareness, in the need of building awareness and education and knowledge. And luckily, like a lot of companies, venture capital funds, portfolio companies are actually training themselves also internally to figure out the state and figure out where they and what do they need or want to do next. And something that I think is lacking still is kind of that we should understand that, like driving any business, if we want to drive change, we need to measure things. So also in the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion space, is that if a company wants to advance it, it's like good to figure out the state, find some key priorities, and then also have like tangible measures for things to actually get something change done. And it's great. I think it's what's happening.
I think you mentioned measures, so that's something that is very, very important, because of course you have to have a target and you have to start reaching out to that goal, and that actually involves the entire team at the same time. So glad that you brought up that, and I'm curious to hear all of your, like, if you would be able, or if you have to choose only one advice to everybody, what would that be? But let's take the advice. Let's have a cliffhanger here to later that people will continue listening to this. So your advice coming up. But before that, I have understood that all of you are making investments. Sofia and Annika, you are SVCs, and Katja and Henrik, you are both angel investors. So how do you evaluate the teams, and how do you evaluate the diversity behind the teams? We can start, Henrik, with you.
I think it's like, depending on what type of investments you're doing, like seed investments or very early stage or a little bit later stage. So I think, it's all about, everyone knows this. It's all about the founders, and all about the business idea that they have and their ability to somehow conceptualize something that is solving a problem. And I want to go back to what I said about the diversity of skills and talent and mindset and all these things. I think that is so important, and I always think it's better if you have, like, let's say 2 founders, if it's actually very rare today that you have a man and a woman who is founding companies, and I, to be honest, I've never seen it, unfortunately, and I think that is something, that would be great. But it's, as you say, like, where somehow the structures go so deep somehow in thinking, and many times, you take the easy way somehow, and that's also many times a reason for why you fail. You go with a friend only, you don't think about it as a business thing and stuff like this. So I think it's a very, very good question. I would love to I do have a theoretical answer to this, what I would like to see, but reality at the moment is, when we talk about the very early investments that I do, for instance, is that it's normally it's a small team. It's either women or men who do it most, together. So that's my experience. I'm sorry I don't have a stronger answer to this.
How about you, Annika?
Well, I mean, we view it as something really positive, especially if it's founder team with both genders. I think we have an active portfolio of about 50 companies, out of which 7 are like that, and 1 is a female-only team. So, but we don't set specific targets in investment stage or anything like that. But afterwards, we tend to more work sort of afterwards, and we're now currently discussing whether we should actually have some hard targets, for the amount of women in the leadership team and boards of our portfolio companies within a certain time frame. So, but yeah, we don't sort of evaluate that much based on gender at the investment phase, at the due diligence level.
Yeah. How do you do at Index, Sofia?
Yeah, happy to add some more perspective. As has been mentioned, I think you evaluate teams through many lenses, and diversity being one, but there are many other lenses as well. What I think is interesting to drill into with the team, because as you mentioned, the team may or may not be very diverse from the very get-go, because it just so happens to be these 2 founders who came up with this solution together. But what I think is interesting is diving into the attitude, and sort of as you're approaching hiring in the next 6 to 18 months, say, and these are the key positions that you want to fill. How are you thinking about building out the candidate pools, and which pockets of pools are you looking in to make sure that top of funnel takes diversity into consideration? And so that we're accounting for that as we're thinking through recruiting, and later down the line as we're thinking about board construct as well. So I'd be looking to make sure that it's top of mind, that it's addressed, and that there's a clear path for being able to also take it into consideration as the organization grows.
And Katja?
Yeah. I think as a woman in tech and also like now as an angel investor and someone who's been very active in different diversity, naturally that the majority of my deal flow is very, very diverse, and most of the companies that I've backed just happen to have woman founder, CEO, and in case when I, for example, don't know the approach, it's very interesting to ask, no matter what's the background of the founding team, to ask their approach in diversity and inclusion topics and how they intend to build the team. But many studies also show that more diverse investment teams actually are able to attract more diverse deal flow. So I think that's one key point.
Yeah, I think you all here are telling more about, that if the team doesn't fill all the criteria at the moment, that you all would like to, coach them towards, to have the mentality and they have the understanding that, yeah, they will probably perform better when they do have more different people as their team. But now the promised cliffhanger, I think we have to go there. We only have a couple of minutes, so we are all super curious of your best advice. All the listeners here, how would you advise them, what should be done in order to have a more diverse tech community? Who would like to start?
Okay, I'll go because I want to build on what Sofia said. I think really one of the things that I've done and what I've seen, I've also invested in a lot of companies around the world, and I think it's as you say, like in the start, it's meritocracy in a way. You really have to look at a good opportunity, and that's the focus there. And of course, it's very nice if it's diverse, but it's not the key. I wouldn't say it's a key thing, at least not for me. But I think when you go forward, I think it's super important that you embed into all processes, like, also the culture. What is your culture? And sell it from a more of a benefit perspective that, when you start recruiting, when you start looking at talent management, make sure that, it's interviewed first of all. I mean, like you're looking at people who are equal in a way. Also, if you let's say in this case, if you would recruit a man, it's so super important, because like it's when you start to build this new company, to put those things into the leadership, into the communication, into this thing, and make sure that that's part of everything. So basically what I think, to actually make a big difference, you need to put it into values, basically. And I mean, that's what I've seen I was in If Insurance, which is a big insurance company before this, and there were more women managers than men managers. Now we have in Oriflame, for instance, there's 40-60, so there's 40% women in the top management team and 60% men. I'm personally a person who is only 20%, I'm representing 20% in Finland, so I think, but it's also, I think it's all about values in the end, and that's why the thing Sofia said, I think that's really the main. If you want to make a difference, you need to start somewhere and start building in this context. It's of course different than when you go to bigger companies, but like when we talk about startups, that's my key thing. Be a good person, do the right thing, and drive quality, I think, basically.
Who would like to continue from here?
Well, I mean, I agree kind of what you said on values, Henrik, but I also want to echo what Katja said earlier about educating yourself. I think that's my sort of concrete advice, is really to get, it all starts with awareness. So start by just educating your whole team, educating your full company, like everyone in the organization. We have, for example, signed up to Paradigm, which has worked out really well because it's a modular approach and everyone can do it. But really, host workshops, really understand your biases. Like we did a whole project in summer where we identified at least 21 different biases that people have. So I think really just start by educating yourselves and the whole company sort of, and go from there.
Perfect. Sofia or Katja?
Maybe I can go next, and I also was already thinking of mentioning what Annika said, awareness building, education, and then after that taking action. And what is great to notice is there's a lot of companies, growth companies, venture capital funds, and organizations who are doing this now, this awareness building and education phase, because surprisingly, like for me as well, when I started learning about these topics, it sounded so vague, but actually there's like a full world of like really great insights and a really concrete best practices and steps one can make. So I think that's one of the most exciting things, that there's steps and concrete actions that each of us can individually take, and also organizations, we can drive this forward. And there's a ton of knowledge on the internet, so just Googling, or feel free to get in touch with me if you need support or help. And also we have on our website a resource bank for finding some information on inklusiiv.org for beginning in the journey.
Thank you. And final last comment from Sofia, and then we have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of good things has already been said, so I'll try to think of a last point. I just challenge folks who are thinking about this actively to not sort of settle on candidates for short-term gain, in that you want to fill this position quickly and you think you have a good candidate, but rather sort of be super diligent on, have I really looked in all the potential candidate pools here, because team is so crucial, and who you hire early on and bring on board will be part of your culture and DNA going forward. So really being, quite diligent on ensuring that you're taking all these parameters into account when hiring, even from the get-go, I think it's just good discipline. So I'll leave it with that.
Thank you so much, Sofia, and all of you joining us today. A brilliant topic, and would like to continue here for a longer, but let's wrap up here, and our next topics will be actually about food tech. So yeah, exciting topics to continue here. But thank you all for joining and listening to this very important topic.
Thanks for having us.